Well, it's 12 o'clock. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sari Raskin, and I'm the VP of Grants and Community Leadership at the Community Foundation for Northern Virginia. I'd like to welcome you to our Insight Region Deep Dive series, the first one, actually, first session of many deep dives that we're going to be doing over the next year. This first session is entitled Who Are Northern Virginia's Youth? And it will focus on Northern Virginia's youth demographics and give us a better understanding of the trends, challenges, and opportunities impacting the next generation in our region. And today's session will be recorded and available on our YouTube channel afterwards. Please share your questions in the Q&A box or the chat box. We'll make notes of them and share them at the end. And I am thrilled that we're doing this. This is part of a larger series, as I mentioned, within our Data and Research Center, Insight Region. And we launched Insight Region in 2020. And again, it is a growing hub for reliable, well-researched, and actionable analysis of our region's greatest challenges and opportunities. It's here to educate the community and also to help us do our grant making and the work that we do at the foundation in a more impactful and effective manner. So welcome today, and I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, who is Dr. Denise Bellows, and she is our Senior Director of Insight Region. And Denise is also joined today by Catherine. I want to make sure, Catherine Lowith. Thank you, Catherine. Catherine has been helping Denise this as an intern, which has been extremely helpful, I know, to get all the data organized and help Denise present the information that she'll be presenting today. So Denise, if you'd like to take on the challenge of educating us about the demographics of Northern Virginia's youth, please do.
Thank you, Sari. Thank you and welcome everyone. I'm excited to be kicking off our deep dive series. Again, my name is Denise Bellows and I'm the Senior Director of Insight Region. I'm happy to share what I've been learning over the past year about Northern Virginia's youth population. As Sari mentioned, over the past few months, I've had some support from Catherine Lowith. She's a Master's of Science candidate at Georgetown University's Data Science and Public Policy program. And Catherine received a scholarship from Georgetown's McCourt School of Public Policy Experiential Learning Fund to cover her time with us. So I just want to acknowledge that support and her efforts. So thank you, Catherine. So over the past year, Insight Region has been exploring the data available on Northern Virginia's youth. Well, we have addressed various aspects of youth in some of our recent reports, such as Ready for Kindergarten, Ready for Life, the shape of youth mental health, and the shape of youth mental health. A comprehensive examination of Northern Virginia's youth population has not been conducted since the 2010 report, A Portrait of Children in Northern Virginia. Amanda's going to put the links to those reports in the chat if she hasn't already. And I just want to also emphasize these slides and a recording will be shared on our website following this event if you want to follow up on anything. So 2010, it might be hard to recall what life was like that long ago, but you know a lot has changed. Since 2010, the demographics of Northern Virginia's youth have also changed. In this report, the most recently available data will be from 2022, and sometimes we have data from 2023. So the population of youth under age 25 in 2022 were born between 1998 and 2021, making them about half Generation Z and half Generation Alpha. So when we talk about Northern Virginia's youth in this report, we're talking about Generation Alpha. So I'd like to briefly, I think I coined that term. I don't know, you let me know if anybody else has said that before. So I'd like to briefly comment on why we're using youth aged under 25 to describe the youth population. And sometimes we talk about youth and we reference those under 18 or a school-aged population. However, we also have opportunity youth age 16 to 24. They're a really important demographic as they make up our young workforce and they have unique needs as young adults. So let's look at just the population of youth in that age group in Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia continues to have a relatively young population. Did you know that the average Northern Virginian is only 37 years old? That's about 2 years younger than the average Virginian. So the population of youth under age 25 grew by 25% over the past decade. However, this rate of growth is slower than we've seen in earlier decades. Now, this slower growth was not unexpected. In fact, it was predicted in our 2010 report. So figure 1 here shows the percent of the population that is under age 25. And as a point of reference, in 2022, 32% of Northern Virginians and 31% of Virginians were under age 25. So this is represented by those 2 horizontal blue bars in the figure. You can see that Fairfax County is most aligned with the proportion of youth for the region and the state at around 32%. Loudoun and Prince William counties have a greater share of youth than the region and the Commonwealth. Alexandria City and Arlington County have a smaller proportion of youth under age 25. Now let's talk about the vertical lines in our bar chart. The blue bar represents 2012 and the gold bar represents 2022. So when we compare the two bars for each jurisdiction in the figures, we can see that the share of youth age 0 to 25 is relatively similar from 2012 to 2022, with some increases in Arlington County and some small decreases in Loudoun and Prince William counties. So here we show the age distribution of youth by jurisdiction. So within the population under age 25, we can see that the middle line of the chart is showing the 50% mark. So the blue colors represent the older populations, age 10 to 24, and the cream and gold colors represent the younger populations, age 0 to 9. Across all jurisdictions, most youth are aged 10 to 24 years, and less than 50% are age 0 to 9. Alexandria City has the highest proportion of children age 0 to 9, followed by Fairfax and Manassas cities. At 42%, Falls Church City has the largest proportion of adolescents aged 10 to 17 years. We can also see that Arlington County has the highest proportion of youth age 18 to 24 at 32%, while Loudoun County has the smallest percentage of youth age 18 to 24. So the distribution of youth across Northern Virginia is likely impacted by factors such as housing affordability for young families, the quality of schools for families with youth age 10 to 17, access to entry-level jobs or the location of local colleges and universities may be a factor affecting the 18 to 24-year-old age group. So finally, when we're talking about age, this figure is showing us the percentage point change in age distribution over the past decade from 2012 to 2022. The youngest demographic, children aged 0 to 4, has decreased by 2 to 3 percentage points across all jurisdictions. So I was curious whether this could be related to declining birth rate or whether it could be more influenced by the ability of young families to live in this area. We can't know for sure based on these data alone, but I did learn that Virginia's birth rate declined 1.8 percentage points over this same period of time. So that could explain what we see here regarding the population age 0 to 4, or at least partially explain. Here's another fun fact I learned. Though Northern Virginia has 1/3 of the population of Virginia, we only have 1/4 of Virginia's workforce. This figure tells us about changes in our young workforce. That's the dark blue color in the bars. So over the past decade, the population aged 18 to 24 declined 4 percentage points in Alexandria City and Arlington County, but increased by 4 percentage points in Loudoun and 2 percentage points in Fairfax and Prince William counties. So it almost seems that 18 to 24-year-old age group moved westward a little bit. This would align with other national trends over the past decade, which shows movement towards the suburbs and away from the city centers during and after COVID. This could also be influenced by jobs created by the construction of the data centers out in Loudoun County, or the low mortgage rates we saw in 2020, which may have made the purchase of single-family homes more accessible. And lastly, I'll point out that Alexandria and Arlington saw large increases in their adolescent population aged 10 to 17. This could be a cohort effect of a younger population remaining in these areas as they go through the school system. So next, we're going to examine the diversity of Northern Virginia's youth. When we first explored these data in the census, we found that the census categories of Asian, Black, Hispanic, and White did not demonstrate the Northern Virginia that we know as residents of this area. We turned to the IPUMS data to map these broad census categories with detailed race and ethnicity data. After examining the frequencies by detailed race and ethnicity, we created new groups of racial identity. So the bubble chart that you see here represents the diversity of Northern Virginia's youth in expanded racial categories. Each dot or bubble is a unique racial and ethnic identity. So let's go through what some of this data are showing us. So the largest circle that you can see in the center represents the number of Northern Virginians aged 25 and aged under 25 who identify only with the white racial category in the census data. The next largest bubble, shown in blue, represents youth who identified only with the Black or African American racial category. So we've color-coded all of the other racial groupings. So all the red bubbles you see represent Hispanic or Latino ethnicity. You can see that the largest of the red bubbles are people who identify as Salvadorian, followed by Guatemalan, Mexican, Bolivian, and Honduran. These are the largest detailed ethnicities within the Hispanic Latino grouping. We also divided the census grouping for Asian. We divided it into South Asian, East Asian, and Southeast Asian. So the purple bubbles that you see represent South Asians. These youth, identify mostly as Asian Indian or Pakistani. The orange bubbles represent East Asian youth, who identify mostly as Korean or Chinese. The green bubbles represent Southeast Asian youth, who identify as Vietnamese or Filipino. Finally, you'll notice that there seem to be a lot of pink bubbles. The pink bubbles represent youth who identify as multiracial or multi-ethnic. So as you can imagine, there are a lot of possibilities here. The largest group within this category identifies as white and, quote, some other race, meaning that they were able to write in some other racial category that was not available to select. That's followed by youth who identify as white and Black. So here I'd like to acknowledge also that in our census data, even with the detailed race and ethnicity variables, we did not have options for the Middle Eastern and North African or MENA population. They may be represented within mixed race as a write-in, or they may not be specified at all. We do look forward to including representation of the MENA population as future census data become available. I believe this population will be more represented in around 2026. In summary, what we can learn from this figure is that among youth aged under 25, the most common race ethnicities are white, Black, Salvadorian, Asian Indian, and multiracial or multi-ethnic. Now, if you are as excited about these data as I am, you can interact with this figure further at the link in the chat. This interactive Tableau map allows you to filter by jurisdiction rather than viewing Northern Virginia as a whole, as we're seeing in this image here. So Amanda's going to put that link in the chat if she hasn't already. I'm getting a thumbs up that has happened. So great. All right. So after we explored the frequency of each racial and ethnic identity among our youth, we wanted to look at the percentage point change over the past decade. And what you can see in this figure is that the largest demographic changes were in youth reporting 2 or more ethnicities. That is, they reported Hispanic and one other race. And that's followed by youth reporting 2 or more races, meaning neither of the race ethnicities were Hispanic. Youth identifying as multiracial and Hispanic increased by 4 to 8 percentage points in all jurisdictions. Multiracial and not Hispanic increased 1 to 4 percentage points across all jurisdictions. The dark blue color that you see in this graph represents youth identifying as South Asian, and we can see that this group increased in all jurisdictions except for Alexandria City, where it declined a little bit. And the figure here, the dark horizontal line indicates no change over the past decade. So it should be the 0 mark in the graph. So now let's look at everything under that line. Youth reporting a single race, specifically youth reporting only Hispanic, Black, or white race, declined across all jurisdictions. The largest decreases appear to be in youth reporting Hispanic, Latino only, and youth reporting white only. Hispanic only declined 1 to 7 percentage points in all jurisdictions, and white only declined between 2 and 8 percentage points in all jurisdictions except for Alexandria City. So from these data, it is clear that one big change from our 2010 report is that many more of the youth in Northern Virginia identify as multiracial or multi-ethnic. So this could be due to more youth moving into this area who are multiracial or multi-ethnic, or this change could be evidence of youth thinking differently about their racial and ethnic identity and maybe being more inclined to report multiple races or ethnicities when asked. So in addition to race and ethnic diversity, we also looked at the data on youth in immigrant families. So here we can see the number of children who have parents who are immigrants. We may also know these children as first-generation Americans. Nearly 50% of Northern Virginia's youth aged 0 to 17 are first-generation Americans. So in 2022, 48% of children aged 0 to 17 lived in a house with at least one foreign-born parent. This is nearly double the share in the Commonwealth of Virginia. In Figure 6, we compared the population of foreign-born youth in Northern Virginia over 3 periods. So those are the 3 bars you see in your chart. So it's 2012, 2017, and 2022. And since 2012, the proportion of children in an immigrant family increased by 5 percentage points in both Northern Virginia and the Commonwealth. So in summary, we have increases in foreign-born youth in Virginia and Northern Virginia, but still the share of youth in foreign-born families is more than double that of the Commonwealth. So here we're looking at a small subset of the population in immigrant families. So these are youth who are foreign-born themselves. So as of 2022, approximately 9% of Northern Virginia's youth aged 0 to 17 are immigrants, meaning they were born outside of the United States. This does not include youth who are born to US citizens in a foreign country. When we look at the trend data since 2012, we can see that while the share of the youth population that is foreign-born increased slightly in the Commonwealth, it decreased slightly in Northern Virginia. Still, like the share of youth in immigrant households, the proportion of foreign-born youth in Northern Virginia is nearly double the proportion in the Commonwealth. So we've discussed 2 different ways of looking at youth in immigrant families: children who are immigrants and children of parents who are foreign-born. So Figure 8 shows the percentage point change in foreign-born youth and youth in immigrant families by local jurisdiction. So across most jurisdictions within Northern Virginia, the population of children in immigrant families has increased between 4 to 11 percentage points. Decreases occurred in Arlington County and Falls Church. Loudoun County is a little unique as the foreign-born youth declined, but youth in immigrant families increased by 8 percentage points. This tells us that some of the increases we see in the youth population may be driven by increases in new immigrants or immigrant families in our region. So now, related to foreign-born youth and youth in immigrant families is language proficiency. Approximately 12.5% of Northern Virginians identify as having limited English proficiency. The National Center for Education Statistics tracks the number of public school students receiving Language Instruction Educational Program Services, or LIEP services. And as you can see here in Figure 9, the need for LIEP services has grown by 20% from 2011 to 2021. And the upward trend of service need will likely continue. Finally, we examined youth experiencing disability. Recent state and national data show that between 4 and 6% of youth experience disability. Youth disability in Northern Virginia is below 5% in most jurisdictions, which is consistent with the rate of youth disability for Virginia and the nation. In the census data, disability includes 4 types of disability: ambulatory, cognitive, hearing, and vision. So those are the 4 categories that you see here in this figure. In Figure 10, we show how youth disability has changed among Northern Virginia's school-aged youth over the past decade. Among the 4 types of disability assessed, the greatest increases in most jurisdictions are in cognitive disability. Cognitive disability increased more than 1 percentage point in Fairfax County, Fairfax City, Falls Church City, and Manassas City. So I was curious whether there had been any public response to this modest increase, and I found that in October 2024, the state of Virginia increased support for individuals with developmental disabilities, which may support growing needs of youth in this region. So now let's summarize and answer the question, who are Northern Virginia's youth? So when we talked about age, we learned that most youth are older, age 10 to 24. The population of youth under age 5 has decreased across all jurisdictions in Northern Virginia over the past decade. For race and ethnicity, we learned that Northern Virginia's youth have become more diverse over the past decade. Multi-ethnic and multiracial youth have grown the most, while youth reporting one single race has decreased. We learned that nearly 50% of Northern Virginia's youth live in immigrant families, either as foreign-born youth or first-generation Americans or children of immigrant parents. Over the past decade, the proportion of children in immigrant families has increased and remains double that of the Commonwealth. We talked about language proficiency, and we found that the need for language instruction, or LIEP services, has grown by 20%. And finally, we examined youth experiencing disability. We learned that cognitive disability has increased in the region, but overall disability rates are consistent with state and national trends. I'd like to acknowledge contributions by Voices for Virginia's Children and the Northern Virginia Regional Commission, who've served as advisors on this project. So thank you so much for your time today. That is the end of my slides. Thank you for being part of the kickoff to this series of deep dives on Northern Virginia's youth. Are there any questions or comments?
So yes, hi, everyone. So a couple questions. So one, has any of this demographics data surprised you, Denise, as you've been covering information?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think I probably spent the most time talking about the changes in race ethnicity. I think it was kind of exciting to see when we separated out multiracial and Hispanic versus non-Hispanic, to see that there were actually larger increases in those reporting Hispanic and one other ethnicity than just multiple other race ethnicities. So I think that was kind of an exciting finding for us.
Yeah, I also, when we were looking at this information, I was amazed at how people are self-identifying themselves now, and how that is becoming more complex, and how you're going to track that data, but that it's really not a simple. It used to be much more linear, and now people are really defining themselves in different ways, and we have to be respectful of that and figure out a way to how to track it. So thank you.
Definitely. Yeah.
So someone is asking, are you counting emotional disabilities within cognitive disabilities? And as everyone knows here, we are very focused around mental health, which will be part of the final report as well. And I know you're going to be uncovering some information. So some questions are, if not, how are you tracking youth with emotional disabilities? So addressing kind of, how are we going to be exploring that?
So I'm just going to go back to the slide here. And I believe cognitive disability, this is the census data. So I believe it can be included in cognitive disability, but it also is grouped in with learning disabilities and those kinds of disabilities. So this is the way the US Census asked that question. There are other data sets that separate that out a little bit more and distinguish emotional disabilities from cognitive. So we'll probably explore that data a little bit more when we're talking about health population.
Sounds good.
That's a great question.
And there's a lot more coming in the final report in the next deep dives as well. So that this will be addressed probably in one of those. So the diversity of the diversity, we talk a lot about that, right? We talk about diversity, but there's so much diversity, as you've pointed out here.
Yeah.
And one of the questions is around how many languages are spoken in Northern Virginia? So did you get a sense of what that number was? And what are the implications, as we talked about, for LEP programs, and just recognizing that we have to meet the needs, right, within the educational system and in our social services to meet the needs of the diversity, as we talked about.
Yes, we did look at some of those numbers, though, that didn't all end up in this presentation. So I don't want to misquote you on the exact number. I know it's going to shift also a little bit by jurisdiction, but overall in the region, I know, for example, like in some schools, it was 18 to 25 languages that the school systems were having to teach or manage teaching in certain areas. But yeah, that's a good question. We can add more of that in the full report to kind of map out how that looks in each jurisdiction, because I think it might be slightly different depending on where you are.
Great. And by the way, some of these questions are helping us continue to define what we're going to focus on in our upcoming deep dives, and then also the reports, as you just mentioned. So just want to mention one more time that the session is being recorded, and you'll have all the slides that that Denise was reviewing, and will be posted on our YouTube channel. And we're taking a couple more questions if there are any. We're waiting to see. Let's see if there are any others.
Yes, please. If there's other data and information that you would like to see when we talk about demographics, because this is a subset of all that we examined, as I kind of mentioned when asking about the language question.
Okay, great. There is another question.
Yeah, sure.
It's from a nonprofit, which is great. What do you recommend for nonprofits that are looking to collect data on and understand the populations they serve as they compare to the Northern Virginia data that you just shared? We've seen increases in reporting of multiracial as well, but are not sure how to go deeper on that info. Interesting. It's exactly what we're talking about, right?
I mean, it depends on your data collection tool, and that's I've done a lot of survey data collection and primary data collection in my day. I mean, I don't know, I'm happy to consult with you on how you're asking the questions. If that's helpful, I have a demographic survey that I've created that's a little bit more expansive. It depends on how you want to use the data also, right? So
So there are
happy to chat
opportunities,
with-
right,
yeah.
so the great thing about having
Yeah.
Denise as a resource is she's available. So if you have any questions, especially to the nonprofit community, if you have any questions,
mhm.
please feel free to reach out to Denise, and I'm sure she'd help you pull together some data if that's relevant to the work
Yeah.
that you're doing.
Yeah, sure.
Great.
Mhm.
When will the 2023 data be available? So when is the most recent data?
There is now, just like, I think a week ago, 2023 5-year ACS data became available. And then those, if you notice, some of the data we use with IPUMS and some of the data is just straight from the Census Bureau. So the IPUMS data is going to become available in January 2025. And some of the census data was just released, I think, last week. But not soon enough for our presentation. So.
Okay, so one last question, it looks like, and then we can
Mhm.
do a little preview to what's coming up. Each county has such a range of SES, educational service, support educational
Socioeconomic
service.
status.
Thank you,
I'm assuming
socioeconomic status
socioeconomic
across
status.
the county.
Yep.
Any
Mhm.
further interest in disaggregating further by community level of individual SES?
Yeah, actually,
Thank
that is a great question. That's a nice lead into some of our future report coming out and our future deep dives. We have a whole section of the report that's focused on social determinants of health. So looking at poverty, socioeconomic status, housing, housing stability, food security is in there too. So when you're talking about socioeconomic status, I'm assuming it's kind of what we're
That's what
talking
I
about
think
there.
that's confirmed. I think that's what that
Mhm.
person meant.
Yes,
Great.
it will be in the report, but not just in this demographics chapter.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
Wonderful. So the final question, which will lead into our conclusion for today, is how does the Community Foundation support children and youth? And we do that in a variety of ways. One of the ways, of course, is we do offer some grants, and stay tuned. Our grant making, all of our grant making that goes out the door from our discretionary funds, the process will be beginning in January. There is a webinar on January 8th that will give information about the 2025 process. If you're interested, look on our website. We have to also send out as a follow-up with the recording information about how to register for that webinar if you're interested.
Mhm.
And then, of course, on March 25th, mark your calendar, March 25th, 2025, we'll be hosting our 8th annual Shape of the Region Conference entitled Our Children Creating Safe, Supportive Futures for Northern Virginia's Youth. And it'll be in Vallow Park and Tyson's Corner. And basically the topics we're focusing on for Shape of the Region, which will all be covered actually in the final report that Denise will be producing, will be around creating safer spaces for youth. So combating bullying, preventing substance abuse, and improving mental health access. So Insight Region will share data on our region's youth. So there'll be even more information. We'll be having experts and community leaders speaking about these important issues in front of hopefully around 400 of our closest friends that want to learn more about these issues and potentially want to help us try and solve some problems and create solutions for some of these issues as we move forward into the future in our region. So with that, I want to thank all of our attendees for joining us. Thank you to Denise and Catherine for helping us as well with all of this. And Denise, this is just a great example of the impact and influence of Insight Region, and really what a great asset it is to the foundation and the community. So I thank you for taking the time to educate all of us. I know this is only the beginning, and we're looking forward to the future deep dives. And if you have not already registered, we will send you that information as well. But the next deep dive is, hold on, I'm going to tell you all so you will know. Oh, it's on our slide, January 29th. 2025 at 12 p.m. over Zoom. So again, we're doing them as lunch sessions. Bring your lunch, sit down and listen to some important data. So we look forward to seeing you hopefully on January 29th. And of course, at Shape of the Region on March 25th, 2025, focus on children and youth. So thank you for joining us today and happy holidays.